At 79, the world calls him a legend, but behind that title lives a pain no Oscar could ever erase. A face partially paralyzed at birth. A voice the world mocked. A man Hollywood rejected before it ever learned his name, Sylvester Stallone. Rocky kept rising on screen, but in real life, a father fell to his knees, and there was no background music to carry him through. Some wounds don't heal in the gym. They don't fade with fame. They don't disappear behind a 1,000-watt smile on a red carpet. Today, we uncover what the headlines never fully told you. Stay with us, because the truth behind this legend will leave you speechless. The phone call that broke everything. On July 13, 2012, Sylvester Stallone received the phone call that no parent in the world is ever ready for. His son, Sage Stallone, 36 years old, his firstborn, had been found dead in his apartment in Los Angeles. The cause was coronary artery disease, silent and without warning. The kind that does not announce itself before it takes someone. No symptoms, no goodbye, just a morning that never started. Sage was not just his son. He was his continuation. He had acted alongside his father in Rocky V when he was just a teenager stepping in front of cameras the same way Stallone once had, with that same hunger behind his eyes. He had gone on to direct his own films, quietly building something of his own in a city that judges everyone by their last name first. He had the same jaw, the same eyes, the same restless energy of someone who has things to say and is still learning exactly how to say them. He was 36. He had barely started. Soon Stallone went silent in a way the public had never seen from him before. He canceled everything: film sets, press interviews, red carpets, public appearances. His team made no dramatic announcements. No statement captured what was happening. Those close to him during those weeks described a man who did not collapse the way people expect grief to look. He did not break down publicly. He did not reach for words. He simply stopped. Not loudly. In silence. In the way that is actually far harder to watch than tears. The world kept moving. Hollywood kept producing. Awards seasons came and went. And somewhere inside all of that noise, a father sat with a loss that no amount of money, no level of fame, and no number of films could touch. Months later, in one of the very few interviews he agreed to give about that period, he said something that stopped everyone in the room who heard it. There is no training for this. There is no script. For a man who had built his entire public identity around the story of the person who gets knocked down and rises again, Rocky, Rambo, every character he ever played, this was the blow for which that story simply did not work. There was no final bell, no crowd rising to their feet, no music swelling in the background to signal that the hard part was almost over. Just absence. Just a chair that stays empty. And the slow, heavy, private work of learning to carry something that never gets lighter, only more familiar. The price fame never told him about Rocky led to Rambo. Rambo led to sequels. Sequels built a decade where Stallone was not just a movie star, he was a symbol. His films generated hundreds of millions. His name guaranteed an audience in every country on Earth. Alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger, he defined what an action hero looked like for an entire generation. But symbols are not people. And the more the world turned Stallone into one, the harder it became to remember the difference. His marriage to Sasha Chak, mother of his two oldest sons, collapsed under the weight of a life that never slowed down. Those close to them described a man who filled arenas but could not sit still in his own home. Fame had arrived like a flood, and it never receded enough for real life to grow back. The physical cost was just as real. During the filming of Rocky IV in 1985, Stallone asked Dolph Lundgren to hit him with full force. He wanted the punches to look real on camera. One punch shifted his heart slightly to the right and caused swelling that put him in intensive care for 9 days. Doctors said he had been within hours of dying. For Cliffhanger, he hung from real mountain faces. For Rambo, he trained in conditions the human body was not built to sustain. Decade after decade, he asked his body to perform things it could not keep forgiving. By his 60s, the debt had arrived with full interest. Chronic neck injuries, back surgeries, knees that made ordinary mornings painful. The man who built his entire public image on indestructibility was learning quietly, with no cameras present, that every body keeps an honest record of everything it has been asked to carry. And underneath all of it lived something the cameras never fully caught. The quiet, a private fear of a father who understood perhaps earlier than he ever admitted that the armor he wore on screen protected no one he actually loved. He said no to $220,000. Before the fame, before the stadiums, before any of it, there was a script written in 72 hours by a man who had not slept and had nothing left to lose. In March 1975, Stallone watched Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer alive, fight Chuck Wepner, a man nobody gave any real chance. Wepner was not supposed to last. He was there to lose cleanly and go home. But he bled, fell, got up, and kept going long after everyone expected him to stop. Stallone did not see a boxing match that night. He saw himself every rejection, every casting call that ended with a polite no. Every year the city had refused to learn his name, and he went home and did not sleep for 3 days. He wrote about a slow, overlooked boxer from Philadelphia who gets one impossible chance at something nobody believes he deserves. He gave him a name, Rocky Balboa. When he finished, he sat back and understood, without anyone telling him, that this was the truest thing he had ever written. Not because it was fiction, because it was memory with different names. Producers Irwin Winkler and Robert Chartoff read it and wanted it immediately. They offered $25,000, then $100,000, then $220,000. For a man who had recently sold his dog for $25 just to survive a New York winter, these were numbers that did not feel attached to reality. But there was one condition. Stallone could not star in the film. They wanted a real actor, someone more polished, more conventional, and with a face that did not droop on one side, and a voice that did not make audiences lean forward in their seats just to follow the words. Stallone said no. They raised the offer. He said no again. And again. The room must have found that hard to understand, a man with empty pockets turning down a fortune. But Stallone understood something they did not. A man who sells his story without being in it does not walk away with money. He walks away having confirmed everything the world already believed about him, that he was background, that he was supporting cast, that he was never the one the camera was supposed to follow. If he sold that script without being in it, he would not be selling a movie. He would be selling the last version of himself that still believed he was worth something. The producers eventually gave in. They paid $35,000 and handed him the role. Rocky opened in November 1976, earned over $225 million worldwide, and won 3 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Stallone became only the 3rd person in Oscar history, after Charlie Chaplin and Orson Welles, to receive simultaneous nominations for Best Actor and Best Original Screenplay. The man they said did not fit the part had just become the part everyone remembered. The years, New York almost broke him. Long before the Oscars, long before Rocky, long before anyone in the world knew his name, Stallone arrived in New York City in the early 1970s with less than $100 in his pocket and absolutely nothing else to fall back on. No connections, no agent, no one waiting for him anywhere in the city. Just a name nobody recognized and a face the industry had already quietly decided was not what it was looking for. He slept in the Port Authority bus terminal for weeks, not as a temporary inconvenience, as a reality. He used the bathrooms there to wash. He sat on benches through nights that had nowhere else to go. He took any work that existed, cleaning floors, ushering at movie theaters, caring for the lions at the Central Park Zoo. Jobs that paid just enough to stay one day ahead of nothing. He went to casting call after casting call. Each time, he prepared. Each time, he walked in believing this one might be different. Each time, he heard the same response delivered in different words. He did not fit the part. His face was not right. His voice confused people. A comeback when you are something closer to what we are already looking for. He never was. Then came the winter that broke him open in a way that none of the rejections had managed. The money ran out completely. Not almost completely. He could not feed himself, and he could not feed Butkus, his bull mastiff, the one living thing in the city that did not require him to be anything other than present. Butkus did not care about his drooping lip or his slow speech, or the fact that Hollywood had no use for him. Butkus simply stayed close and asked for nothing complicated. Stallone stood outside a liquor store and sold him to a stranger for $25. He had no other option. That was the truth of it. But knowing something is necessary does not stop it from feeling like a betrayal. That night, he did not cry from hunger. See, he cried from the particular shame of a man who has failed the one thing that loved him without conditions, without auditions, without any version of number 3. 3 weeks later, he watched that boxing match, and everything that followed the script written in 72 sleepless hours. The rejection of $220,000, the Oscar nominations, the decades of fame, all of it traces back to a man sitting alone in the dark, watching another man refuse to stay down, and recognizing something in it that felt like permission. The first thing Stallone did after the Rocky deal was signed was return to that liquor store. He waited outside for 3 days until the man who bought Butkus appeared. He offered $100. The man wanted $500. Stallone paid $15,000 without negotiating a single dollar. Butkus appeared in the final credits of Rocky. No explanation. To just his name on screen, a quiet, private acknowledgement that some victories do not fit inside any trophy, and some debts matter more than any amount of money ever could. The boy who was never supposed to make it, Sylvester Stallone's birth on July 6, 1946, at Lincoln Hospital in Hell's Kitchen, New York, was difficult from the very first moment. The doctor used forceps, a tool used to help guide the baby out, and the pressure was too much. The nerve controlling the lower left side of his face was permanently damaged. The result followed him every single day of his life. His left lip drooped slightly. His left cheek barely moved. When he spoke, the words came out slow and heavy, the kind of speech that children are cruel about and adults quietly dismiss. His father, Frank, was a man of hard silences and harder expectations. His mother, Jackie, was loud, dramatic, and full of restless energy. But in different ways, neither of them gave young Sylvester the one thing he needed most, the feeling that he belonged somewhere. His parents divorced when he was 11. After that, he moved from relative to relative, city to city, tolerated more than he was loved. He was expelled from 14 different schools, not because he was dangerous, but because he was a boy who had figured out very early that the system was not built for him. He sat in the back rows. Teachers did not call on him. Classmates copied the way he talked. He learned before he was a teenager that his presence in a room was, at best, an inconvenience. He found something close to peace in movie theaters, dark rooms in rough neighborhoods, where he would sit for hours watching men on screen who spoke, and the world listened. Without any clear plan, without any real reason to believe it was possible, he decided that was the only thing he wanted. Not because the path looked open, because nothing else felt worth trying. At 79, still standing, finally still. In 2015, the film Creed gave Stallone something no Rocky sequel had ever truly managed the chance to play vulnerability without dressing it as strength. Rocky Balboa in Creed was not a champion. He was an old man, sick and alone, training the son of his dead rival because giving was the only thing he still knew how to do. The performance was not powerful because of muscle or intensity. It was powerful because of its honesty. For the first time on screen, Stallone appeared to be speaking as himself without the armor of fiction between him and the audience. He won the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor. Standing at the podium, in front of an industry that had spent decades treating him as a symbol rather than an actor, he said simply, "I want to dedicate this to my son, Sage." The room went completely quiet. It was the moment the industry finally admitted what it had taken too long to say, that behind the myth, there had always been a real man. Today, at 78 years old, turning 79, in July 2025, Stallone lives in Palm Beach, Florida, in a home he helped design himself. He is surrounded by his 3 daughters and Jennifer Flavin, his wife of more than 25 years. They briefly separated in 2022 and then chose each other again, no prolonged drama, just a conversation and a decision. See, for a man who spent decades resolving everything on screen with his fists, it was perhaps his quietest and most honest victory. His television series, Tulsa King, became one of the most watched shows of the past 2 years. At nearly 80, he found what action films could no longer give him. Characters with texture, with real humor, with the kind of fragility that only belongs to men who have lived too much to keep pretending they feel nothing. Those who know him today describe a man who is more present, more patient, and quieter in a way that feels earned rather than resigned. The death of Sage changed his relationship with time at a cost no one would choose. It made him understand that life does not offer second takes, that the moments with the people you love are not scenes you can reshoot if something goes wrong. He has said he talks about, at 79, the world calls him a legend, but behind that title lives a pain no Oscar could ever erase, a face partially paralyzed at birth, a voice the world mocked, a man Hollywood rejected before it ever learned his name, Sylvester Stallone. Rocky kept rising on screen, but in real life, a father fell to his knees, and there was no background music to carry him through. Some wounds don't heal in the gym. They don't fade with fame. They don't disappear behind a 1,000-watt smile on a red carpet. Today, we uncover what the headlines never fully told you. Stay with us, because the truth behind this legend will leave you speechless. The phone call that broke everything. On July 13, 2012, Sylvester Stallone received the phone call that no parent in the world is ever ready for. His son, Sage Stallone, 36 years old, his firstborn, had been found dead in his apartment in Los Angeles. The cause was coronary artery disease, silent and without warning. The kind that does not announce itself before it takes someone. No symptoms, no goodbye,